Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today. My name is Sam Dunaiski. I am the Solar Programs Manager with Renew Wisconsin. Renew is a renewable energy advocacy organization. We do policy work, programs work, and educational work across the entire state of Wisconsin to advance renewable electricity. And today I'm going to be teaching you, hopefully, everything you need to know about solar electricity or solar power in the year 2020. So there's a lot of misconceptions surrounding solar electricity or solar power. And when we say solar, we're primarily talking about solar photovoltaic or solar PV. And the PV effect was actually discovered quite a long time ago. It was first discovered in the early 20th century. Bell Labs was using solar PV on a commercial scale as early as the 1950s, but a lot of the strides certainly have been made in the last 5 to 10 years. And because of that, because solar is becoming much more mainstream and much more known amongst the general populace, there are still a lot of misconceptions about solar, and we're going to go through a few of those right now. One of the main misconceptions is that solar, because a lot of the strides have been made in the last 5 to 10 years, it appears to be sort of a newer technology. But again, as I said, the technology has been around quite a bit. And because of that, there's really, solar arrays are actually pretty simple when we get down to it. There's primarily only two components to a solar PV system. And those two components are, as you can probably guess, the solar module. That's what most people think about when they think of the word solar array. And also the other main component that we need for a solar system is an inverter. And we'll get into what an inverter is in a little bit. But let's start with the solar module. So as you can probably guess, the solar model or the solar module or the solar panel is what converts sunlight into. Going back to our solar modules, solar panels typically come in two different sizes. The primary reason for this is just because typically we might be able to fit two smaller panels into the space where a larger panel might only fit. So the two main sizes of solar panels are 72 cells, and again, those cells are the number of our cells are those smaller square boxes located within the larger solar panel. So the solar panels come in two different sizes, like I said, a 72 cell and a 60 cell. 72 cell panel is roughly the size of a typical door or door frame. The 60 cell panel is obviously a little bit smaller than that, same width, but typically only about 5 feet in height. So this is an example, a diagram, of how our solar array works. And when we talk about solar arrays, especially ones on houses or on buildings, 99% or more even of those solar arrays installed right now are what we call grid-tied solar arrays. So they are still connected to the grid, and we're going to kind of go over the reasons for that coming up as well. But this is essentially how a solar array works. You have the sunlight here striking your panels. Again, that excites the electrons. The electrons then flow down the wires into this green box here, which is our inverter. The inverter, again, converts that DC electricity to AC electricity. That electricity then flows into our circuit box, which is this gray box right here. And then from there, it flows into your home or business, powers your lights, your appliances, etc., etc. There are often times, especially during the midday hours when the sun is at its peak, where your solar array is actually going to produce more than your home or business may need. And at that point, that electricity follows the green lines here out through your circuit box and out onto the grid, down to your neighbor or your neighbor's neighbor, etc. So what net metering is like I said, it's a credit for the extra energy produced by your solar array. And so what happens is when your let's say, for instance, your solar array produces 100 kilowatt hours of electricity, and you consume 120 kilowatt hours, you only pay for the net difference of your meter, which would be about 20 kilowatt hours. So that's why it's called net metering. Essentially, you only pay your utility for the extra energy that you need to pull in off the grid. So this is a really great, especially economic benefit of how solar can work. Each utility, however, does have different net metering policies, so it's really important to check out the policies of your utility before installing solar. However, like I said, this policy is really great because it essentially acts as a virtual battery. That energy, like I said, can be banked for cloudy days or for nights as well when you need to pull in extra electricity off the grid. The best analogy I can give for this, and I think this analogy probably needs some updating, is we like to call it rollover electricity, kind of like rollover minutes on a cell phone. But again, I don't know if that's the best analogy. It's probably becoming a little bit antiquated at this point. So this is a visual representation of how net metering works. So if you look at this graph, the area shaded in red indicates, and this is a real life example of a home that has a solar array. So the area shaded in red is when this home was consuming or using electricity. So as you can see, there's a lot of spikes. It's not quite as free flowing, as consistent as you might think. However, our solar production actually is very consistent, very reliant. So right around 8 o'clock here, a little before 8, the sun comes up. Our solar array starts producing electricity. That's the area shaded in green. So all of that green area is what we have for solar production, solar electricity production. So the solar array continues to produce electricity, increases that electricity until about 1 p.m. or so. That's when the sun begins to set, and that's when our electricity begins to drop off as well, until roughly 7 or 8 o'clock at night, when the sun sets completely and our solar array stops producing electricity. So the area shaded in green is the solar that this home produced throughout the day. The area shaded in blue is the area of self-consumption, and that's essentially solar electricity that is being used by this facility in real time. So as you can see, the area shaded in blue is actually much less than either the area shaded in red or in green. And this is another real good visual representation of why net metering is so important, because a lot of that electricity does not correspond and overlap. However, that solar array is still producing quite a good amount of electricity that can be offset, like I said, during those times in the early morning and in the evening hours when this home has to pull electricity in off the grid. So this is a really good example, like I said, a visual example of why net metering policies are so important. The other item that we look at when we're assessing if a home or a business, a facility is ready for solar is the rooftop space. Now we can certainly... So, why solar in Wisconsin? As I talked about before, there are a lot of misconceptions about solar, and solar in Wisconsin is typically where a lot of those misconceptions come into play. So, our first sort of misconception, or solar myth, as I like to say, is that solar is too expensive. Solar has actually come down quite a bit in price in the last decade or so, about 75% in the last 10 years. So, the yellow line on this graph represents where the solar price per watt has gone since 2010. So, as you can see, before 2010, it started off at well over $5 a watt. Now it is down from anywhere, depending on what kind of solar array you produce, between $1 and $3 a watt. A large solar farm can come in at under $1 per watt. However, a residential array on a home rooftop will still cost about $3. But the important thing to remember here is costs have come down quite a bit. And that is partly due to the technology, but partly due to the areas indicated by the blue bars, which are the amount of solar electricity that has been installed in the last 10 years. So as you can probably guess, with economies of scale, as we ramp up production, the costs come down quite a bit, and the fact that we have installed so much electricity in the US over the last 10 years has really helped allow that price to come down quite a bit. The other misconception about solar is that it is unreliable. Now, a lot of folks think when they first look at a solar panel that it's just a flimsy pane of glass. That could not be further from the truth. As I said, solar panels primarily consist of layers of silicon. These are hardened layers of silicon. And then a layer of tempered glass is put over the top of that silicon to protect it from debris, much like in this picture right here. So panels are a lot stronger than most people think. They can withstand up to golf ball size hail. They can withstand up to hurricane force wind gusts. But they do, however, have a little bit of problem. Another reason for solar in Wisconsin is that it creates jobs. Solar installer is the number one fastest growing job in the country, and is projected to stay that way for at least the next 10 years or so. So doing a solar project also contributes to our local economy. These solar projects produce good paying jobs that certainly cannot be outsourced, and it really is a very beneficial way of keeping our money in our communities. We need real hands on the ground folks. Another big concern that a lot of people have with solar electricity, especially in the upper Midwest, is that we do not receive enough sunshine to make a solar array work. And while it is true that we do not get as much sunshine as that's mainly because about 10 years ago, Germany made a huge investment in solar electricity. They get approximately 7 to 10% of their electricity right now from solar electricity, and about 35% from renewables. The other main thing to look at is Wisconsin gets significantly less of our electricity from solar power, less than 1%. Hopefully, that will increase over the next few years as more of these larger solar farms come online. But the primary thing that we need to think about is that solar can work in Wisconsin. If it can work in Germany, a country that is located 100% north of Wisconsin on a latitude scale, can certainly work in a climate and an area like Wisconsin as well. Another reason to do solar in Wisconsin is that it is a way of being much more self-sufficient. You can produce your own electricity, which is really exciting to a lot of folks on both sides of the political and ideological aisle. You can not only save money, but you can also save future money by hedging against rising utility prices. utility prices typically rise at anywhere from 1 to 2% per year. So even if those utility prices didn't rise over the next 20 to 30 years of a solar array, you would still be saving quite a bit of money by installing solar on your rooftop. The other reason that solar is a great investment is it increases your home value or the value of your building as well. So this is primarily a slide, obviously, for residential solar arrays, but solar homes sold for 20% faster and for 17% more than an equivalent home in your neighborhood. So if you and, say, your neighbor are both looking to sell your home, essentially it's about the same size, about the same age, and your home. It also, of course, as you can probably guess, helps contribute to a healthier environment. A average sized home solar array, which is about 5 kilowatts, over the 25-year lifespan of those panels will offset over 100 tons of CO2. It will offset the environment as well. So why go solar? Again, it works. It actually will produce electricity, and it'll increase the value of your home or business, and it will also create good jobs, a healthy environment. So now let's take a look at the economics and incentives of solar. And this is probably what most people are excited about. They want to know exactly how big of an array they're going to need and how much it's going to cost as well. So we'll start out with some of the incentives. And one of the primary incentives in Wisconsin is through an organization called Focus on Energy. Focus on Energy provides incentives for all sorts of energy efficiency measures. One of those is installing new solar electricity. And this is sort of the table, the breakdown of how those incentives work. So generally it's about $200 per kilowatt, especially for a residential system. If we get into commercial systems, that incentive kind of moves a little bit here with this table, but this just goes to show some of the examples of what kind of incentives you can get from Focus on Energy depending on the size of your system. So like I said, a house is generally about 5 kilowatts. A very small business will be around 10 kilowatts. Something like a church or another smallish business will be around 20 kilowatts. Once we get into 100 kilowatts, we're looking at larger businesses, larger facilities. And then when we get into the 300 to 500 kilowatt range, we're looking at large. The other big incentive that we look at is tax credits. So right now, there's a federal investment tax credit that is good for 26% of the cost of a solar array. Up until this point, the last few years, it had been at 30%, so that tax credit has been reduced, and it will continue to ramp down over the next 2 to 3 years. So in 20. So here's a cost example for a residential solar system. So again, the average cost for a residential solar array in Wisconsin is about $3 per watt. So our average, again, every home, every business is going to be a little bit different, but the average size is about if we incorporate our Focus on Energy incentive into this residential array, that gives us about $1,000 off of that price. As I said, the federal tax credit, used to be around 30%. Now it has been dropped down to 26%. Incorporating that cost drops another $3,600 off the cost of our solar system, excuse me. And that leaves us with a total out-of-pocket cost of a little over $10,000. So typically, we can see anywhere from a 30 to a 40, excuse me, anywhere from a 20 to a 30% reduction in our price for a residential array. Now, again, those out-of-pocket costs are going to be certainly different depending on the exact size of a solar system that your home needs, but this is a good baseline to look at if you're interested, excuse me, in installing a home solar array. Commercial or business solar customers can save even more money. So this is a table breakdown essentially of how different size systems work and what the price of that will be and some of the incentives that businesses, excuse me, will be able to qualify for as well. So businesses can save quite a bit more money, anywhere from 44 to 46% off the cost. So this is a case study we have. This is HOFFMAN Manufacturing, located in Madison. They make, excuse me, furniture and other materials for retail stores, excuse me. And this is some of the exact cost structure of their solar array. So this is a real solar array that was installed. And this is sort of the breakdown of their price. Their total project cost was over $200,000. If you look at the incentives they got, including from Focus on Energy, there was also a City of Madison rebate they received as well. They also received a federal tax credit investment as well. They also received a federal tax credit on that solar investment. And because of that, they were able to save over $50,000, or excuse me, over 50% of the cost of this solar array. So their $220,000 solar price tag came down to just. Here is a few example also of some of the renewable energy commitments by companies that work in Wisconsin. As you can see, there are quite a lot of very recognizable names on this slide, and all of these corporations have renewable investment goals. So this is not a new phenomena that is being seen in the business world. Solar can really save money, renewable energy can really save money, and it also helps to paint these businesses in a good light. So here's a few different examples of solar arrays across Wisconsin. In the top left corner, this is an apartment building, so a very large array there. In our top right corner, I think a lot of you will recognize the name in that photo. This at one point was the largest rooftop array in the state of Wisconsin. It has since been surpassed, but quite a few panels on that facility. And then the two photographs, So some reason why Wisconsin businesses go solar. Again, in some ways, it's very similar to why a home would go solar. You can produce your own energy. You can be a bit more self-sufficient. With tax credits and other incentives, the economics of solar are much more appealing. This will create an economic competitive advantage for your business, and it also will allow you to differentiate yourself, hopefully, from your business competition as well. We like to talk about paybacks. Typically, Wisconsin businesses see anywhere from a 4 to 7 year payback. Homeowners and homes, residential systems take a little bit longer, anywhere from 7 or 8 years to 11 years for their paybacks. And nonprofits and government systems see even a little bit longer, about 10 to 15 year paybacks. The important thing to remember, however, is that doing nothing is not free. Your home or your business is still going to continue to use electricity over the next, hopefully, 20 to 30 years, or maybe even longer. By installing electricity, again, you're able to reduce your electric bill considerably over that period of time as well. So remember, doing nothing is not free. You still are going to need to consume electricity, and you're going to have to pay for that in some way, shape, or form. So if you're interested in installing solar, these are the next steps in the process. Ideally, you want to make a phone call with a solar developer. You'll be able to discuss your energy usage. Your solar installer or your solar firm will pre-assess your building or your facility with satellite imagery. They'll give you an estimate on size, cost, etc. And then what they will do is they will come out and schedule a site assessment. And what they do with the site assessment is they get up on the roof, take some much more accurate measurements that will give you a much more concrete idea of what size. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them either by phone or by email. Typically, Renew Wisconsin is very good at connecting folks to our network of solar installers. We can guarantee that the solar installers that we recommend are do excellent work and that they are very reputable and have had experience in this industry. So if there are any questions, I can take them. And otherwise, thank you very much for listening.